Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling The Donor Class Tasks the Dem Leadership to Pull the Left Side of the Overton Window to the Right. So, in this title, there's a lot of different left right references. Let me explain what I'm talking about. And this is in a way, a reframing or a reorientation on this series of videos I've been doing about trying to characterize what is a Democratic Party actually doing in American politics. Why are they so listless in pursuit of political power? Why do they shy away from governance? Why do they shut themselves off from the opinions of their constituency or the people who would be most likely to vote for them, and why they act peculiarly and in a way that doesn't show a political self-interest on their part. And so this is, and I've in the past I've talked about this as the good cop bad cop routine, and I don't think that quite that captures some of what's going on, that captures some of the game that the Democratic Party plays in relationship, or the Democratic leadership in particular plays with the Republicans, and also within the whole political constellation of institutions, including media, so forth and so on, nonprofits. But anyway, the and obviously political pressure groups and donors, corporations, mega corporations. But anyway, this is what inspired me to do this video now and to think about it in these terms was a segment from the Young Turks, where they reported on the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, refusing to vote on banning dark money from primaries. And so this would be a transparency measure, a good government measure, a democracy measure, so that, in other words, that if they were banning dark money from primaries, then groups like AIPAC or large Republican donors in some guise or other couldn't come in and change around the constellation of who gets elected by buying enormous amounts of advertising for one candidate or the other within the primary. And what often happens, and what has happened now in the last cycle, is that Republican donors have come in via, for instance, AIPAC, American Israel Political Action Committee, and other groups, Democratic Majority for Israel. Unfortunately, again, a Zionist group, a pro-Zionist group, a pro, Israeli fascism group. I'm a Jewish person who opposes that political regime, and also the American donors' role in that. But anyway, and unfortunately some of the support within the American Jewish community for that political stance. But anyway, the donors, and it could be another vehicle that they choose, and these are donors who are not of all religions, all faiths, so forth and so on, who use various vehicles to push the including the Kochs, so forth and so on, the Koch brothers, to try to mold and shape the form of who gets elected as Democrats within Democratic races. So the DNC, the governing body of the Democratic Party, refused to stop that practice of dark money within it. Would be in other words, they couldn't, some dark money from a left-wing source, from unions or what have you, would also have been banned by such a measure. So but anyway, the most dark money comes from the right, and most from corporate interests, and Um, Also, interests surrounding the military-industrial complex, which is very interested in stirring up wars around the world. Um, so anyway, the this provoked me to think more about the um, how to describe the Democratic Party and what it's doing. And so this formulation, and it's not necessarily the ultimate formulation that I've come up for, is that there is this Overton window. Now, some people dismiss the Overton window as some kind of, um, non-existent thing, but it's actually a very useful idea. So the Overton window is what is considered thinkable. The window is as wide or as narrow as one could imagine it, and can shift. The Overton window can shift along the political spectrum from left to right, or you could say, even in a multi-dimensional description of political issues, and that was not necessarily traditional left-right, the Overton window is supposed to encompass all that's considered to be serious and coverable by the media, and considered, or if not coverable by the media, considered as serious by policymakers in their deliberations behind closed doors. But it is often reflected in how things are portrayed in the media. So the Overton window describes from left to right. The classical Overton window describes what is considered to be the serious, important people and political factions in a given country's political life. So if the Overton window is shifted very far to the right, you don't have much of a left wing being represented in public discourse, and also in parliaments, or in regional parliaments or regional councils and so forth and so on, because it's considered to be taboo beyond the left side of the Overton window. So what I am proposing here is that, I'm sorry to use this word Overton window, maybe there's some other better way to talk about it, but that the Dem leadership is tasked to push that left side of the Overton window to the right. So even though the words left and right are in the same sentence, imagine then this window where that left side of that window is being pushed to the right by the Democratic leadership. And this is the role that you see that Nancy Pelosi went during the time that she was the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, but also Joe Biden throughout his political career in a way, and others. He's not the only one who have in the leadership group. One includes Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, so forth and so on, who are all their role seems to be to backstop the that left side of that Overton window, to create the idea to the public, okay, that they are the left, okay, of what is possible. They are the leftmost part of what is possible. And furthermore, what's on the right side is undesirable based on their public presentation. So they're representing, quote unquote, the left side of the possible, the left jamb. You can use JAMB, the fancy word for the side of a window. But anyway, that they are saying that nothing to the left of them really is worth talking about. Furthermore, they're dangerous, they're unserious, they're overly emotional, any number of different other things. And that the people who are at the left jam or to the right of them are the serious people. Okay. And so it creates a definition of quote unquote left that is far to the right in American politics currently. And occasionally that left jam drifts to the left. So what happens is that you see in the course of the Biden administration, and in terms of the latest episode of Biden's political life and political leadership role, that he has created a slide to the left and then a push to the right. So you see how he has gathered people within the Democratic Party around him at a time where it looked like the party might have been tilting toward the left, including the popularity of Bernie Sanders, also the election to Congress of the Squad, and also we're seeing other victories more recently of left-identified socialist or Justice Democrat left committed to a program of Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, free public college, forgiveness of medical debt, so forth and so on, all kinds of reforms, and actually, one would hope also within that a model, not only the modeling of small donor, transparent political campaign funding, but also creating anti-corruption measures and pressing for them within that platform. But anyway, this appearance certainly of a left shift within the Democratic Party, and it's not only appearance, there is a real left shift. What we see on the leadership level is a finessing, okay, of that leftward turn by Biden, and he created the notion, he allowed, with the Build Back Better agenda, he allowed more of a voice for the left. He had Ron Klain as his White House chief of staff, who listened to progressives. But then, he did some things. He in the terms of the Department of Labor and certain reforms he made, also antitrust reforms. There are certain things that he's done that have the appearance certainly of a reformer's passion, or a reformer's, at least an endorsement of long-time interest of the base of the Democratic Party, including labor, supporting them, while at the same time not having really that passion. In other words, he appears, he shows signifiers, he does virtue signaling of having the passion of someone who is a new FDR. He didn't use that word, but it was applied to him by, I would think, some sycophantic press people or party operatives, but he never really has the passion to fight like FDR did, to make enemies like FDR did, in order to put through such a program. But anyway, but he created the appearance of wanting to be a person of sort of the center left, while at the same time pushing now really to the right in many regards. So I'm not saying this is a permanent shift. He could waver back and forth between basically a center right, slightly center right position to quite a center right position, maybe even a slightly center left. It depends on which issue you're talking about. So this is where a universal left-right spectrum fails one in describing any given politician or any given political initiative. But it helps to some degree to talk about things in that way until we find another better way to talk about them. But anyway, he appears to be managing the base and the leadership, the mid-level leadership, the members of Congress over and so on, the whole elected political class within the Democratic Party, and managing it, attempting to create a appearance that to block also a left challenge, for instance, in the 2024 presidential primary. So that requires him to solidly represent this leftward JMB, this leftward side of the Overton window, while keeping challengers to his left, either discouraging them by thinking, well, you're going to be out there in nowheresville if you try to challenge Biden from the left, because Biden will be able to scoop up your the enthusiasm you stir up and then turn it to the interests of the donor class again. And so the donor so this is the image I'm trying to, or the world I'm trying to sketch out for you in this video, is what services are the Democratic Party providing for the donors, the mega donors, the ones which they listen to, the ones who they do the most work for. Now, the Republican Party is almost always also doing the work for the donors. Without exception, they are much more assiduous in their support of donor class interests, and they're the same donors, most 80% or so, to the Democratic Party. Some of them. I mean, there's a certain sector that is considered to the right, to the far right, who most often is almost always contributing to Republicans, but those donors also sometimes, as with this dark money, organizations that have funneled money to within Democratic primaries to try to shape the Democratic Party. So basically, what's happening is the donor class is shaping that Overton window. They can't only be focused on the rightward portion of the window. They may have distaste in a way. Some of them, some of the donors individually might have distaste for the absolute far right, or distaste, personal distaste for Donald Trump, or even if they recognize that DeSantis is a neo-fascist, as is Donald Trump, in his own right, in a way, that they have distaste for him too, and his anti-trans and anti-historical science, anti-knowledge campaigns against the study of history in Florida, or for that matter, in the United States. Any history that discomfits certain people. There are people within the donor class who don't like that. They don't like the right side of the jam. But at the same time, they want that Overton window, especially on these economic issues, to be over there on the right side. They don't want a left side, especially on economic issues, and also on political, the funding of political operations issues, the legalized corruption in the United States. And this is something that also in this portion of the Young Turks have been, and Cenk Uygur has been adamant and an important voice, and a I don't know about a pioneer, but a strong advocate for and activist in trying to clean American politics of the money that drenches it, and the corporate money and the big money that steers American politics. But he was focusing on, in that episode, on how even the progressives seem afraid. The progressives in the Congress are afraid to put out legislation that and to talk about the funding aspect of politics. In other words, to propose beyond this omnibus package, which had some anti-big money provisions in it that was stripped out early on. That was from last year, when the Dems held the majority in the House. That he basically, he being Biden, sort of created the impression them that they need to make friends with him, and that or for that matter, the progressives in Congress are according to Cenk Uygur, are playing too much make nice games with corrupt politicians by not stirring up this corruption issue, stirring up the funding of campaigns issue, and the unlimited supply of corporate money and of the money of the donor class to steer politics. So anyway, and so Cenk was making a point that was, quite disappointing to me as a supporter of many in the squad. And also he mentioned Bernie Sanders as well, not just the squad, that they really are very, very quiet on this issue, and they are playing polite, make nice games with these people who are doing this task for the donor class, the people being the leadership of their party or the party that they caucus with, in the case of Sanders, who is an independent, but that they don't resolutely and relentlessly expose both their colleagues and also their opposition in their use of corporate funds and the donor class funds and the steering of politics by them. And so, but anyway, I want to put forward this idea of the control of this left side of the Overton window by the donor class as being the key role of Democrats. And this kind of explains in a way that's clearer than the good cop, bad cop game that I was talking about. And it is a little bit of a return to the containment vessel idea that I have also been working with in the last couple of years. The idea that the Democrats are a containment vessel for popular unrest, but they're very much more specifically focused on the leftward side of the Overton window. So you could say the right also is dealing with popular unrest, and it's channeling it in a particular way. And the containment vessel idea still has interesting features to it. But the way the donors are seeing the Democratic Party, and the way the Democratic Party leadership is seeing itself strategically as these people who are attempting to both fool the American people to think that they are left. Okay, it's a form of political fraud that they're committing, that the idea that they are left and that they're for the people and of the left, while essentially being of the right. So this defrauding of the American people's interest in a political party that represents their interests and so forth and so on, and their policy preferences, it involves a couple different operations. It's a complex thing that goes on. It's not easy to do, okay? But it's easier to do with the help and the backing of the donor class and the large amounts of money that the donor class pump through politics, pump through the media by buying advertising, which actually also in that segment that Cenk mentioned and so forth and so on. But it's a very important aspect of the control and power of the donor class is that they also buy off the media by buying advertising. And so, and therefore a huge revenue stream for media organizations, being such a stream. So, but anyway, there's a complex task of fooling people to think that they are of the left when they're really to the right, not to all the way to the right, but significantly to the right of center. At times making a deviation, a trip to the left, more to the left, to capture either other politicians, to foreclose other politicians from challenging them from the left, either challenging them in a given debate or in in a challenging speech on the floor of the House and so forth and so on, or in the challenging utterances in the media, on social media, even in the accounts that they control. Some members of Congress, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has 13 million or so followers on Twitter, and so they have their own media channels that they can manage to some degree on their own. Some, not all, but that's a particularly big one that AOC has. But anyway, there's efforts to try to manage from the point of view of the Democratic Party leadership, so that involves, as I'm saying, this detours to the left, and then to gather, and then to turn to the right. Okay, and that needs to be observed. Okay, and that needs to be understood as this dance of keeping that left side of the Overton window over to the right. But you can't always demand that, because things happen in the world that make a left position seem more popular and more rational and more and gather support for that idea. So you have to make the appearance to show that you are also of that opinion, and then at some point or other, you again turn to the right, or you turn to your donors. You create a policy structure that that short circuits that idea. And this is very important from the point of view of, for instance, climate change and acting effectively on climate change. We need a large public sector, not exclusively a public sector. We need a very large and self-managed and self-regulated public sector with inspectors general and so forth and so on, but nevertheless a publicly owned portion of the climate action team, so to speak, the people who are transforming our economy, let's say, to be sustainable. And we currently have a system, though, that's being set up where private and Wall Street and private donors, essentially the parts of the donor class, are being given control of or substantial ingress into public policy in the area of cutting carbon emissions, among other things. And while it's good to recruit some privately held institutions in the fight against climate change, it's not going to be exclusively a public sector effort. It should be led by the public sector and led by not by for-profit institutions. So anyway, this I'm using this as an example of how the dance to the quote-unquote left, or to the concern to the left, and then turning it to the right, in this case turning it to Wall Street and the donor class interests that are represented by Wall Street, is part of this subtle or not so subtle corruption of purposes that we need, in public purposes that we need to be to serve the public needs primarily. And if secondarily a corporation makes some money off of that, okay, I am okay with that. But and it's part of that in our economy as it exists. It's inevitable, and in a future economy also, it's hard to think of ways to quote unquote exclude that from a complex political economy that we need to address our multiple social and then ecological needs. But anyway, this vision I have, or this metaphor I'm talking about, is a way to describe what's going on in our politics, and I hope that it will inspire some people to think about ways to combat this particular dance around the left side of the Overton window, how it's be defined, and how people should, in some sense, reject bogus claims that people represent the left side of the Overton window. And I will do more videos about how this might be rejected. So anyway, so I'm going to stop here, and I'll talk more about this. There are more things that will come up about this particular issue, but I wanted to make this video less than 30 minutes, and we're about just over 30 minutes. So please share your thoughts in the comments below. Please subscribe to Politics 2100 if you're finding anything of interest here. And also, please like the video if there's something about it that is intriguing or interesting to you. And also, I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks.